by a car in the crosswalk at COCC. Actually, you know what? Time out on that. Time out on that. So the reason I'm wearing this ridiculous outfit today, I did a photo shoot earlier this morning for COCC. And as part of the photo shoot, I didn't realize this. The photographer was going to have to get up on one of the roofs of one of the buildings. I got to use 243 at 5 a.m. This is great. And while we were sitting there for the photo shoot, my friend who works for college relations got an email from one of the guys on campus that has to worry about people like getting hurt on campus. And he said, "I hope you're not planning on letting that photographer get on the roof." And she said, "Yeah, we are, because that's what we agreed to like 3 weeks ago. You need to get up high to get the mountains and the field and the pretty shot." And he said, "We can't be liable for that kind of risk." And I said, "Email back. Say, do you worry too about crossing the street on College Way?" And she emailed back. This discussion started. She said, "We don't worry about that." I'm like, "Well, you do realize statistically it's more likely you're going to get hit by a car on College Way than fall off the freaking roof of the campus center, right?" And she said that off. And then the email stopped coming in. Once again, either put him to sleep, or he realized that liability-wise, depending on how you define liability. Now, the case was not over. I left to go to class, and she had to deal with that, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is, what's more likely? That you're going to get hurt in the crosswalk on College Way or on the roof of the building. Sean's going, "But you're right, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with an insurance policy. You can't be having people on the roof, because if somebody does get hurt on a roof, it's probably going to be a way, way bigger deal than if they get hit in the crosswalk." But it becomes expectation. Sure, it might be a much, much more costly injury, but how often is that going to happen? I use the same argument. Did any of you guys live in a neighborhood that has an HOA, a homeowners association? Yes, these quasi-governmental agencies, I never heard about these until I came out in the West. All of a sudden you've got these weird, like, "Yes, call the meeting to order. Fifi pooped on my lawn." You know, and it just becomes these ridiculous discussions. So I was going through the budget of our HOA. We pay dues into it, which I'm guessing you guys do too, like maybe $100 every quarter or something like that. I don't know how much they are. $50 a year. Oh, you got a deal. Like $100 a quarter in my neighborhood. Anyway, I was looking through the budget. I'm like, "What is this reserve study thing?" And they said, "Oh, that's something you have to do every year." I'm like, "By law?" "By law." I found out it's not, actually. You don't have to do it every year by law. You have to dust it off every year and look at it by law and put it back. So I just saved us $3,000 for this year by that. But anyway, I started looking at the reserve studies. I'm like, so what does a reserve study do? Reserve studies are done, probably not just for HOAs, but also for government. You put money aside in case something happens. It's like having a rainy day fund, right? Rainy day fund, in case something happens, you sock it away so that when something happens, you... So I said, "Well, what exactly are you saving for? This neighborhood has hardly any common space." And they said, "Well, there's a fence, and there's irrigation, and there's a sign." I said, "Okay, so there's a fence, and they say it's going to cost $5,000 to replace it. There's irrigation, it's going to cost $1,000 to replace, and the sign's going to cost $3,000. I'm like, how about if I just make the sign out of plywood next time it goes down? We'll save ourselves whatever that money was right there. So it ended up being about $10,000 of replacement value in the event of a catastrophic failure. So it turns out what they're doing is they're making sure we have at least triple that in the account. After they've paid off all the other expenditures, we have to have at least $10,000 for a complete and total replacement of all those funds from year to year. I said, has anybody stopped to think about how stupid that is? What's the chance of catastrophically destroying a 1/10 of a mile of fence, all the irrigation, and the huge rock sign, and then blank looks? Like, because if that happens, don't you think the rest of the bed would also implode as well? And we wouldn't be worried about replacing it. We'd all be worried about like running up South Sister to avoid the catastrophic Noah and his ark flood, or the volcano that I thought was erupting yesterday. Blank faces. So in other words, they're using this with no look at this. Yeah? In other words, they're treating every event as equally likely. You're just as likely every year to have a catastrophic failure as to not have a catastrophic failure. Well, that's kind of the antithesis of what a catastrophic failure is, right? A catastrophic failure, by definition, should be an outlier event. If a catastrophic failure isn't an outlier event, then maybe you should reevaluate who's running your systems. You see how this is the only outlier by the definition of the 5% rule? Everything else happens more than 5% of the time, except for winning with the big three. So therefore, don't bank on that. If it's a very rare event, you don't bank on it. We've got some money socked away. I mean, should we even be irrigating mature trees anyway? Save $1,000 right there. Sign, $2,000, $3,000 for a sign. That's ridiculous. Why is there a fence up? The fence doesn't keep anybody out. The freaking road you can drive right in. So I started bringing all this up, and we're starting whittling away at the budget. But the idea is you use mathematics to do all of this stuff. Now, what does this have to do with my mortality? Well, everything, as it turns out. everything. No, it just makes it. It's just amazing how these little math lessons just like blow people's minds. So I did some Googling. As it turns out, if I was in Portland, I couldn't get it to bed, but the CDC says I'm going to die with 0.269% likelihood this year. That is my chance, my age group, my ethnic group in Portland. I have a 0.269% chance of dying this year. Yeah. I also, this one surprised me, I have a 12% chance of becoming disabled and not able to work this year. That would freak me out a little bit. That's like 1 in 8. So in other words, what I think that means is 1 in 8 guys in my age group become disabled over the course of a given year in the Portland area. That seems crazy to me, but that's what the CDC told me. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to take out an insurance policy on myself. For my family, not for myself, for my family. So I looked up I did some Googling, and I found a policy that pays my heirs $10,000 if I die over the next year. But if I don't die, but I become disabled, they'll pay me $2,000 for that year. And it costs me $360 a year. That's what the policy would cost me to insure myself in that way. What you guys are going to do is you're going to figure out why it costs $360. You're going to play actuary. That's what actuaries do. They set the insurance rates on that. Okay? So you want to give somebody else to work with them on this. You don't have to. You can work by yourselves if you want to. And I'm going to come along with you guys and help you along. And after you've answered that, we're going to regroup as a class. And we're going to discuss the number you got and why you got the number you got. Okay? Yeah, actuary. It's a fun little job. Fun little job. If I could handle being in a cubicle all day, I'd do it myself.